Anthony Melchiori, how are you today, brother?
I accept your apology.
You got it.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality. Goodness gracious, it's February 2nd, 2022 already. I'm Glenn Hausman. That's Anthony Melchiori. This is No Vacancy Live. How you doing, man?
The next time we're together, we need to do another video with us holding our awards. And so we can talk about our award and our upfront on our show every day.
That's a good idea.
Because that teaser is now over a year old, right?
We got to get new opening credits and stuff like that. Yeah, and like my hair was all over the place in COVID for part of that, and then there's a pre-COVID shot where I actually looked groomed. So we gotta figure all of that stuff out. But Anthony, today's exciting because we're going to be talking to two great guests today, and we're going to start off right away with Chip Rogers, AHLA's CEO and president. We're going to talk about the state of the hospitality industry. Then we're going to follow that up with Nancy Medoff, who wrote this great book, Unmute Yourself. A problem that you don't have a problem with over there, Anthony, but lots of people do. So we'll get to it. All right, coming to us straight from what I think is the Laugh Factory Comedy Club, Chip Rogers, president and CEO of the AHLA. Chip, how you doing today?
Yeah, thinking about another line of work here. I'm going to start doing comedy. Maybe I should join your show.
Well, let me tell you, I would say you've had to deal with a lot over the last couple of years, and we've got to laugh about it. And that's one of the things that I saw when we were at AHLA last week. A lot of people were pensive, but had a great sense of humor about what we've all been through. And you got up on stage and you gave us some insane facts about how much money has been lost and about what we need to do to get back on track. How did you see it?
Yeah, so if you look at just room revenue over the last 2 years, 2020 and 2021, it's about $110 billion, $111 billion in losses. If you add ancillary revenue to that, the non-room revenue, you're probably looking at another $50 billion. So somewhere around $160, $165 billion in total losses over the last 2 years. The direct federal government assistance has probably been in the neighborhood of just a little over $50 billion. And so that still leaves a hole of $110, $115 billion that our industry has had to try to deal with. And that is not a laughing matter, but everyone's dealing with it and doing the best they can to get through it and looking forward to a much brighter 2022.
Yeah. And that hurts the small towns and the big towns because the tax base, you have to take the reduction of the tax base is insane. In New York City, our tax base here in New York City, Chip, you know better than I do what it is. And that affects everyone. That affects the teachers. That affects the police officers, the firemen. When people aren't traveling and hotels aren't paying those taxes on that revenue and the restaurants, that's a problem for every city.
Yeah. And Anthony, it gets magnified when you look at it. It means fewer people are spending money at the other businesses around those hotels, right? All the tourist attractions and things that happen in New York City are happening at a lower level because fewer people are in hotels. And so that tax revenue directly from hotels is measured in the billions. And then when you layer on top of that, the indirect tax revenue from other sources, it's tens of billions of dollars just for New York.
Yeah, the sad thing is, Glenn, you see those lunch places that are usually packed, those kind of those new cafeterias where, every outlet has a different buffet or pizza, and usually thousands of people online during lunch. The other day I was in Midtown and I went past one of those places. There was one person walking out. It was so sad.
Yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think that's why New Yorkers like to eat lunch at 2:00 in the afternoon, is to avoid all of those crowds that were over there. But Chip, back in the day before COVID, I meant to say. But Chip, interestingly enough, this report that you guys put out with forecasts from Oxford Economics and STR says that you all believe that hotel occupancy rates and room revenue are projected to approach pre-pandemic 2019 levels at some point this year. However, my hunch is with inflation and the rising prices of staff that the economics of hotel operations still won't be where we were for quite some time after that. What is the data telling you?
Yeah, great point, Glenn. We should get back again to room revenue by the end of this year, assuming no more major variants like Omicron. As you indicated earlier, inflation and the price of a gallon of gas are seriously impacting travel.
Right.
Especially given the fact that almost all travel is domestic travel here in the U.S. But you also have to keep in mind that, once we get back to it, that number will have to be adjusted for inflation. So it's going to take even longer. But the main point is this: room revenue will get back about 99% of where we were in 2019. But it's the non-room revenue that we're still going to be down about 50%. So we're still looking at losses in the billions.
How do you account for that when most groups and most business travel is still going to be tentative and, a fraction of what it was?
That's probably where the room revenue bit comes in, right, Chip?
Yeah, I mean, ADR is up.
Yeah.
Yeah, ADR is up, and occupancy is still down slightly by the end of the year. And so people will pay more money to stay in the rooms, and that's good. But not eating at the restaurants, you're not having, as you know, Anthony, the large banquets inside the hotels that are so important for driving both jobs and revenue. Those are the things that'll still be missing. And you don't have the business traveler that, of course, has the business checkbook where he can eat in the hotel.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and I think, Chip, is the big difference. When you have the business traveler that's not there as frequently, combined with fewer people in groups that have that corporate credit card, that's where the biggest problem is. Leisure trips, sure, we all spend a little bit more, but I've been on leisure trips with a lot of different people. And when it's other people's money, they seem to spend a little bit more freely, in my opinion.
Of course.
Yeah.
And that's true when we go out to dinner, Glenn, because I usually pay the bill, Chip.
No, that's not true. He doesn't usually pay the bill. He always pays the bill.
So
I'm comfortable with that.
Can I ask a question, Glenn?
Yes, sir.
And Chip, this is a very difficult question for you to answer, but one of the things I'm concerned about a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, is the big gap between the corporate brand support and hotels. We know that corporate brand support has changed. We know that they have not brought back 20, 30, 40% of their staff. How is that going to show in 2 or 3 years? What is going to change, and how is that going to impact the owner and the hotel?
Boy, you raise a really important question, because you're right. Those corporate brands have not rehired everybody. Some because they're still reeling from the financial losses, but some because it's very difficult to find people. And it will have an impact, no question about it. What brands deliver to owners can't be overstated. It's really important stuff. Owners need it. They deserve it. It's part of the agreement. And it's going to change over the next few years. I'm not sure exactly how, because it depends on how fast we get back to those staffing levels. Right. But it's a serious problem right now.
Are you starting to hear that from owners?
Not yet. No, not yet. But it will, because everyone expects to get back to normal at some point. They're going to need that type of support. And brands are doing the very best that they can, given the limited amount of folks they have to do it with.
Right. Chip, one of the things that I saw was yesterday, the National Restaurant Association released its State of the Industry report, and they plan that their workforce is going to grow by 400,000 jobs this year alone, assuming they could find those types of people. Are you and folks within hospitality concerned that people might go to food service as opposed to our side of the business instead?
I'm not so worried about food service. What I am worried about, obviously, is Amazon, Walmart. I mean, if you look at Amazon and Walmart, just last year alone, they accounted for 22% of all hiring in the U.S. That is a staggering number that we've never seen from any.
How much?
22%.
Holy
of all.
cow.
Yeah. And so when you see those numbers, that's more of the concern. But ultimately, we offer something they'll never be able to offer, and that is the ability to serve other people and be in a job that has with it all of the fulfillment that you get with human interaction every single day. They're not going to get that at the other places. And so eventually we're going to be okay, but we got to do our work in that respect. And again, we talk about this a lot. Outline what a career in hospitality means, how much you can be compensated for it, and what is the personal satisfaction you're going to get out of serving others.
Yeah. Anthony, please.
No, our mission is to bring sexy back in the hotel business. So we're going to be talking about how in the next year or two, everything that we do is how important it is to build a career in this industry. It's the most fun, and we talked about it to noise him, but it's just that's really where we have to get the general manager and the owners to really inspire people. People don't work for a paycheck. People work to be inspired, and they need a paycheck, but they don't work for the paycheck. They work to be inspired, but they need the paycheck. And that's where I think our industry has lacked for a very long time.
Yeah, Anthony, you're right. But it's also where I think we have a distinct advantage over some of the other industries I mentioned, is because we have the be to put people in a position where they can build a career around serving others, engaging in a fun, as you said, sexy industry. Stocking shelves is never going to be that. Never. It may pay you well, but it's never going to be that.
Nope.
Right. So then it's our job to try to get people to think beyond just earning a paycheck and tether your career to personal satisfaction in life instead of being a robot, right?
Well, yes. And we are just launching a multi-million-dollar campaign to do exactly that. Within the coming weeks, we'll have a final video product, which I'm going to forward to you guys. Hopefully you'll share it around the world so it'll go viral. But it talks exactly about that. It shows the people who are in this career, in this industry, building a career out of it, the fun that they're having, the enjoyment they get out of it, the self-satisfaction they get. Again, serving others, because it does matter a lot what you do.
And if there's time for me and Glenn to add to that video in any way, let us know, because I would love to have a 30-second soundbite on that video, because the enthusiasm I have for this career field is, it's unleashed.
As soon as we're done here today, I will make that connection. We'll get it done.
I really, really appreciate that. So before we let you go, one other interesting thing is this. You talk about technology in the report that you folks put out. So obviously people are going to be investing more in technology. Does that mean that because we've been tight for the last couple of years, they might not have as much cash flow to invest in other places? And if that's the case, should technology, in your opinion, really be the main driver for future success for hoteliers?
Yeah, look, you're going to have to separate, really what's happened in the last couple of years and talk about what we absolutely must do right now. If you think about the labor challenges that we have, you've got fewer people and you've got to maintain the same quality and deliver the same product. And so the only way to do that with fewer people is to increase productivity amongst those people that you do have. And the only way to do that really is through technology and training. And so those are the two things you absolutely have to focus on: is how do we give people more tools to do their job better? And how do we properly train them so that they can do their job better? If we do those two things, we'll be in a great position here in the next couple of years.
Yeah. And I'd say theoretically, if you have a position open that you can't fill, then you had the budget to pay that person. You could probably take that money and shift it towards that tech stack purchase and get yourself to a place you need to quicker. But I don't know. I don't run hotels. Anthony, is that logic?
I was just going through a profit and loss statement for one of my clients yesterday, and we're building it from a zero-based budget. And, one of the things I said in the budget, we got to stop looking at a budget and backing into the budget. What we've got to do is we've got to put a budget together that says we will find the most qualified people and we will pay them what they want and what they're worth. Then we will take from other places. We will reduce the number of people, maybe. We will reduce maybe the level of amenity. But putting the person at the front desk at the price point that is important for that person to have to train a person that is engaged is what we need to be talking about. Not saying our budget is $1 an hour or $20 an hour, and we've got to find a person that meets that. There's a couple of places in the hotel that we've got to change our thinking. And certainly front-facing employees is one of them. We keep backing into a number that is not sustainable, in my opinion. Chip has nothing to say about that.
I think Chip's getting a little.
Look, I let the expert talk about it, because you're so right. We come up with these dollar figures and we say this is what we're going to pay everybody. And because you've experienced this throughout your career, you can find some really amazing frontline people that can do the work of 3 people. And if they're doing the work of 3 people, I'm not saying triple their salary, but you should certainly make sure they're well compensated so they don't go somewhere else, because the cost of turnover is an extra 30%. You got to layer 30% on every single time you have to replace somebody. Just think about that. What if you gave 25% of that as a raise to that person that's doing an outstanding job? They're going to stay with you a lot longer. You don't have the turnover, and then you just save money and you got a more satisfied worker.
Right. And, I was always a believer in increasing the minimum wage, but someone said something to me that really made a lot of sense. Yeah, I don't mind paying $15 or $20 or $25 an hour to anybody that's qualified. So if a lot of people are taking jobs, whether it be, $15, $16 an hour, that just go there because they have minimal skill and they want that salary because they weren't able to get that before. And then you get a mediocre employee. Okay. I'd rather get somebody that has very little skill, but has the enthusiasm and has the ability to work their way up to $20, $25, $30 an hour. And that's the difference. And when you're putting budgets together, we've got to kind of loosen that line. We've got to give ourselves more freedom to go over budget in that line and take from another line. I don't go over budget, but I will go over budget for the right people. Because if not only you're hiring and rehiring and coaching and disciplining, but what does that do to your management? Instead of doing the things they enjoy doing, they're constantly in human resources disciplining people that don't even want to be there.
Yeah, look, you know this, Anthony and Glenn. When you find real talent, you better compensate that talent, or it's going to go elsewhere. And you can't hold the line well because of their positions, what they're supposed to make. If you do that, they won't be in that position any longer.
No, there was a study done. I think it was either Cornell, one of the big schools, and it said it's basically a basic study. It comes down to highly paid people are more qualified and better. I mean, it's that simple, right? It's like these people make that much money for a reason,
Right.
It's not a mistake.
Yeah, makes sense to me. All right, Chip Rogers. Anything else?
Look,
anything else that you want to say? I think we're having some connection issues. It's making you a little laggy.
No, and I apologize for that. But gentlemen, always great to see you, and we'll follow up on the video right after this.
Yeah, awesome, Chip. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your update. Have an awesome afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
All right, so that was pretty cool. It's interesting to see how much opportunity there still is in hospitality, Anthony, right?
It's never been more. There's never been more opportunity. Is he really at the Laugh Factory?
No, I was just joking because of the brick wall. It was an easy.
I was like, what would he be doing there? You know, like every time I see Chip at a conference, it's always, I've never sat and had a meal with the guy or really shook the guy's hand. And he's always running in a conference, and it's always like, oh, my hero, where are you going?
I got to actually sit down with him for a few minutes at the AHLA conference, which is exciting. And that
you're more important than I am.
I wouldn't say that. You just weren't on scene that day. But somebody who's here right now, somebody who understands how women could be more productive in the workplace, for example, get those promotions, get those big raises. Nancy Medoff, author of the new book, Unmute Yourself. Nancy, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here.
Very excited to see you here. Thank you so much for being here. So interestingly enough, what did you think about what Chip has to say and the ability for people, in particular, women, to find success in our business?
So I enjoyed a very long, successful career in hospitality. So I'm here for it. Absolutely, they can. I love the discussion around being paid what you're worth. I would only add that you need to ask for what you are worth and what you know you deserve. And my mission is to help women figure that out and help women advocate more for themselves. Could be the unicorn job, could be a promotion, could be a salary increase, could be better projects, whatever the case may be. Women are still holding themselves back. And we've made a lot of progress in recent years. There's no denying that. We've seen the numbers. But we still have a very, very long way to go. And that's why I'm here.
All right. So I've always found it difficult back when I worked for other people, and even still when I'm trying to price out jobs now, to ask for that right amount of money. If I'm having trouble, women are having even more trouble. I guess that leads to wage disparity that's in the marketplace, right? It's not always real bias or unconscious bias. Some might be owners of businesses trying to do the best for their bottom line. If someone's not asking for more money, they're not going to pay more money. Isn't that an accurate representation of what could be going on?
100%. So absolutely. I remember when I used to hire people, I would have a range and I would go in either at the low end of the range or maybe the mid range, because whatever money I didn't spend on that person, I could then allocate that money somewhere else. Right. But I'm glad you brought up the wage gap, because I want to talk about that for a second. It's really important. So when you look at the current wage gap, I think the latest number is maybe 76 cents on the dollar a female makes to every male. Not horrible, not great, but not terrible, right? Obviously we want it to be 100, right? But when you times that out over a 40-year career, which I have done, and you look at that over a 40-year career, some women, based on their race and them being women, will leave up to $1 million on the table if they continue to allow that wage gap, and if they continue to accept 18 to 20% less than their male colleagues. So times that out over 40 years, it's $1 million. That is $1 million problem.
Is this being based on one man, one woman serving the same role, or is this more spread out? Because women have been forced either by gender roles or society to take on jobs that aren't necessarily pay as much. Like I think elementary school teachers, which seem to be the purview of mostly females, versus the principal, who's making a whole lot more money that seems to hew more towards males. Is that something that's going on, or are you really comparing apples to apples?
So in this particular example, I'm comparing apples to apples. So this is Glenn Hausman, podcast host, and Nancy Medoff, podcast host. And Nancy Medoff will make 18% less right out of the gate. Because Nancy Medoff, in theory, wouldn't have asked for the difference. So the $1 million problem is actually real, statistical, same job, apples to apples. However, you bring up a really great point, and that's that women are more often than not sidelining themselves from CEO positions, C-level positions, whatever the case may be.
Why? How much, more specific, how much of it is that programming of gender roles and what society expects of women versus just insecurity and not feeling as if they should be treated in that way?
So that's a great question. And I've done a lot of research on this for many, many years. So here's what's different. And a light dawned on me actually when I was meeting with a friend of mine who's in the hospitality industry. He's the EVP of a very big hotel company. We were having breakfast. And if he's listening to this, he will remember. We were in New York City having breakfast, and we sat down and I started talking about imposter syndrome, which I think has been a little overplayed, but we can talk about that in a second later. So we're talking about imposter syndrome, and I was explaining to him that I do training and I do one-on-one coaching with women to help them overcome imposter syndrome. And he got this little look on his face, and I said, "What's up?" He said, "You know, Nancy, women aren't the only ones that feel like sometimes they don't belong, or women aren't the only ones who look around every now and then say, wow, I can't believe I'm in this job. What if everybody figures out that I don't know what I'm doing?" Right. And it dawned on me that it's not just women. The difference is the men, even though they're not 100% qualified for a job, will go for it anyway, and the women won't. So the women allow those beliefs to hold them back.
Okay, now I ask why.
So that is how they're socialized. That is the lack of confidence. That is, from a very early age, men being rewarded for being aggressive on a hockey field or a football field, women being rewarded for collaborating and being nice and having friends. And it's the way we used to be brought up. It's a gender disparity in how we used to be brought up. Not as much anymore, but 20 years ago, that was very prevalent.
Right. Anthony? You muted.
Unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, good plug.
I literally stayed unmuted until I wanted to hear Nancy say, "Unmute yourself." I literally was. That's why I didn't speak for like 20 minutes. So thank you, Nancy. I want to go back because everything you're saying makes sense to me. Some things I've heard before, some things I haven't heard before. But in listening to you speak and listening to the way you square up to the mic and show up for yourself, where was the moment that you kind of were the outlier? Where was the moment that you became that person that unmuted themselves? What was it? Was it your upbringing? Or was it one moment in time?
There were two moments. The first is I'm the youngest of four. And in my house, if you don't speak up, you don't get heard. I have two older brothers and an older sister. It's chaos in my house constantly. So I just have to be loud and have to be an extrovert in order to be heard. I'll tell you, when I was very young, and I might get emotional about this because it's a story that's very close to my heart. When I was 7 years old, I went to a summer camp. It's called Camp Chickamee. And it's a camp in Wayland, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. So I was 7 years old, and every year, one of the campers is awarded what's called the Screwy Screamer Award. So this award goes to the craziest, wildest, screwiest kid in the camp. And it is a big, big honor to get this award. So I was 7 years old, and I was presented with this award at the assembly in front of probably about 200 kids. And everybody was laughing and pointing at me and cheering, but laughing. And I got very upset, and I burst out crying. I thought they were laughing at me. I thought they were making fun of me. And I'll never forget, I turned, and my sister, who's a little older than me, I told you I'm going to get emotional. My sister, who's older than me, was literally on her knees next to me, hugging me and telling me, no, Nan, it's okay. She calls me Nan. No, Nan, it's okay. People want to hear from you. They want to hear what you have to say. And then my sister repeatedly, when I was younger, taught me how to speak up. My sister has never once, not once, spoken up for herself. So I made it my life's mission to help women speak up, because my sister could never do it for herself, but she did it for me.
Wow.
It's a story.
Why?
But that's
Yeah, sorry, Anthony, go ahead.
no, and it's interesting is in listening to you speak, I knew that there was a moment outside of just growing up in a busy household, and I knew you were one of many, you can tell, but there's something about, it's almost fierce. There's something about your personality that, and we interview hundreds of people, and I've interviewed thousands of people over my career. There's something that is undeniable about your energy. And how do you transfer that to, I have 3 girls. I have one that's in the middle of that. I have one that will, you will know she's in the room. And if you don't, she will knock all the doors down to make sure you're aware. And one who will not talk until she's allowed to talk. But when she does, she won't shut up. So they're all 3 different. How do you transfer that?
How do I transfer my energy to someone else?
How do you teach that? How do you teach speaking? Like, give me the, if we were in a room together, and you would counsel me. What's the one thing you would? Because we've all struggled with speaking up for salary, right? I always say I try to remove that from my employees because I always try to give them more before they ask for it.
Right.
And if they're not going to get a raise, I let them know before they're wondering where their raise is. So how do you teach people that? Like, what are the first fundamentals of that?
Yeah, so the first thing is, I know that I have big energy, and it wasn't until many years ago that I truly stepped into that and realized that it's one of my greatest unique differentiators. I used to be embarrassed by it. So now I own it, and I'm in it, and I love it. I would say if you're an introvert, you can't try to be an extrovert. It's not going to be natural, and you're not going to be authentic. So instead, I would say if you need to speak up, think about the situation, and there's different approaches to different situations. So let's say it's a salary increase. You want to be persuasive, and you want to get the people in the room to agree with you. You want to get people to come to agreement. So what kind of persuasive communication are you going to use? Are you going to build a business case? Are you going to practice speaking with confidence? Are you going to have your ducks in a row? Like it's situational. So I would say your ability to speak up will depend on the situation you're in. And just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you can't speak up. It just means you're going to speak up differently. Does that make sense?
It not only makes sense, I think that is very valuable. And I guarantee you there's somebody listening to this right now and that it really resonated with.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony, during the session earlier, you very casually, you said, can I ask a question? That's what you said, can I ask a question? So that's something I would have done. I would have said, can I ask a question? I actually might have said, I have a question. I don't know. Hundreds of thousands of millions of women would have said, I'm sorry, can I just ask a question? So you just said, I'm sorry. And you just said, just. So you apologized for speaking before you spoke.
And then you're saying that I'm only going to speaking a little bit just. So
right.
You're apologizing for being part of it and then making the excuse that it's just going to be short. Therefore, subliminally telling everybody in the room you're not as valuable a participant.
Yes. Words matter. They do.
It's interesting when I see my daughters talking, that one of them does that. It's like, I'm sorry. Can I just ask a question? And I don't think I do that. And I hope I never did that because I don't understand it. Like it makes me upset. I mean, I've been in meetings where people have said, I'm sorry, and I've literally stopped and say, do me a favor, don't apologize. You're probably the smartest person in this room. So ask as many questions as you want, but never apologize. It's so interesting you said that because it literally upsets me. Because it's like, do you really feel that? I'm so sorry you feel that. I really feel I'm embarrassed that you feel, and again, you're a lot of energy, Nancy. I'm a lot of energy. So I'll take up a lot of people's energy. And then sometimes I feel guilty that they're apologizing to speaking up. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
Nancy, in this, we talked about this just ahead of time before we went on air, this I'm sorry issue, because it really bothers me a lot. I get apologized to by women constantly. I mean, I go to the grocery store almost every day because I love cooking. And if a woman happens to be wanting to get something off the shelf and I'm walking by, she's like, I'm sorry. And I always have to be like, you're getting something off the shelf. You're supposed to be doing that. And I have these conversations constantly. How can we break women from this I'm sorry habit? And where is it even starting from?
But is it just a woman thing? Because I've seen men do it too. I mean, is it just a woman?
Men say I'm sorry, but 10% as much as women, if that much, compared to what I see. Anthony, I'm telling you, pay attention over the next week and count how many men say I'm sorry versus how many women say they're sorry to you, just because they're there.
I'm sorry. Did you ask me to pay attention?
Yeah, no, sorry about that.
When do I pay attention?
Yeah, right. Nancy, what do you
So I think it's a fine line between being polite and being subservient. So go back to the way Anthony, just asked the question earlier. He said, "Can I ask a question?" That was polite. That was confident, and he was going to ask his question. Whereas had he said, I'm sorry. So I think that the women are socialized to be polite at all costs. I'm not saying that men aren't socialized to be polite. They are. And, Glenn, you mentioned something. Count the number of times women say I'm sorry over the next couple of weeks. Count the number of times you see women use the word please or just in their emails over the next 2 weeks, right, versus the number of times that you see males do it. And this is controversial. I just led a session last week and we had a very long discussion about using please. The women are just socialized to be more polite, and they negate and they mitigate what they want to say before they even say it. There are ways to say, so instead of please get me this report by Monday, you could say, ideally, I'd like this report back by Monday. Will that work for you? You're saying the same thing. You're just saying one with authority and one subservient.
Why can't? But I've been taught to say please. I'm a big please person. Why is please wrong? Or not wrong, but why is please? Why should we change our please with whatever word you just said?
So I'm saying that when women use please excessively in their emails, they are lowering their leadership profile. They say it, you know what, I should count actually. I've never done the counting actually, probably 10 times to 1. And by far, I have coached thousands of women, thousands in group settings. By far, every 98% of them will say, I use it all the time. I use it way too much. I've been told I use it too much, and I'm going to start rewriting my emails. Almost every one of them. Again, I'm not saying to be rude and bossy or bitchy or any of those things. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you can phrase it so that it's direct and authoritative without being subservient.
But, sorry, Anthony, you go
first.
But it seems like if women get authoritative, then all of a sudden they're called that B word and stuff like that. So it's almost as if women have been set up to fail on either tack there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can do it. I think it's in the way that the women approach it. A lot of women are taught to negotiate like a man, whatever that means, right? But you're not being genuine. You're not being authentic. You're not using your inherent strengths. You're trying to be something you're not. So what I'm saying is, again, hey, Mike, attached, please find this report in an email. Would you ever walk up to somebody at the water cooler and say, hey, Mike, attached, please find this report? You wouldn't. You'd say, hey, Mike, here's the report you asked for. Let me know if it meets your requirements. It's peppering too many pleases in there is when the women just lower their leadership profile.
Yeah, it's interesting. Glenn, my question was the same question you had. So, but my partner, Jeremy, is very much not that person. She doesn't say, everything that you just talked about is how she represents herself. Always respectful, always pleasant, always professional, but never apologizing, never pleasing, never, can I just ask a question? She doesn't speak unless she has something to say. And when she has something to say, she has something to say. And it's very direct, and it's in a way that I've never thought of her in a way that she felt less than someone else. So it's very interesting. And that's the person I deal with. I talk to her 10 times a day. What do you do in an environment? That whole word, the bitch word, really pisses me off, especially having 3 girls. I said the other day, thank God didn't give me boys. I don't know how I would be as a father for boys, but thank God he gave me girls. And it really, really upsets me and concerns me. I've seen it in a setting as a general manager. Whereas if I'm taking the lead on something, I'm taking the lead because I'm a general manager and everyone's going to listen to me. And then if you have a different opinion, you're going to tell me. Typically, the woman push back. Typically, in my career, I've had more women square up on me than I've had men. Most men back off and talk behind my back. Most women are direct with me and tell me the way things are. And some people think, oh, that person's being bitchy. I always felt that person is just being a person.
Mm-hmm.
So I found it different in my career anyway. Maybe because I just, I make sure that I surround myself with strong women.
Or you create an environment where they feel comfortable speaking up. Let's give yourself a little bit of credit here. You're approachable, you're honest. You probably said, I'm not afraid to be wrong. So those women were working in an environment where they felt that they could speak up. And that's where men can help, is by creating that environment, pointing it out to the women as they're doing it, amplifying what they have to say. There's a whole movement out there called Amplify. And that's really bringing attention to when women make a point when it's blown off. So, for example, if you're in a meeting and somebody's trying to speak and somebody speaks over her, it's saying, well, hang on a minute. Susie had something important to say, and I want to make sure we get to that. Or, if my idea wasn't surfaced and then somebody else brings it up the next week and it's a great idea, it's saying, hey, wait a minute, Nancy brought that up last week, so let's make sure that we give her the opportunity to finish her thought. Happens all the time that women are spoken over in meetings. And so, to your point, Anthony, creating an environment where they feel comfortable speaking up and where you will make them speak up is what men can do to help.
Where is it now? If you take a 40-year-old professional and you take a 25-year-old professional female, what's the difference? Is there?
Interesting. Good question, Anthony.
That is a great question. That is a great question. So I can tell you this. I have coached 50-year-old female CEOs recently who lack confidence, don't speak up, say I'm sorry before they speak. And I have coached 28 or 30-year-old up-and-coming female executives who are here, they are large and they are in charge, and no one's going to get in their way. I think it really depends.
So
it
you
depends on the individual.
So do you notice, because in 1973 or whatever year that was, with the Sports Act that came in to make sure that women and men have even playing fields? If you have a hockey team in high school, you have to have a female and a male hockey team. What year was that, Glenn?
I don't know the year, but it was, I think 86, 87-ish. Let's look up Title IX.
And so when I was growing up, girls didn't play sports. My girls played every single sport that's ever been, my daughter played on the volleyball team.
1972. Sorry. And I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just shocked by that. All right.
Yeah, I thought it was in the 70s. Yeah. And I have a daughter that plays, college volleyball. I have one daughter that does theater and another daughter who did all the sports. So I didn't grow up with women having, playing sports. So has sports in that kind of leveling the playing field and working as a team and being a leader and being a captain of a team. That's what I'm wondering, if a 25-year-old or 30-year-old executive is different because they grew up with a team sport. They grew up being maybe more aggressive.
So it's definitely that, and it's also look at their role models, right? So if you're in high school or college right now playing soccer, you have Abby Wambach to look up to, right? And her book and her advocating for equal pay. And I forget the name of the woman, the Olympic. Oh, I forget her name.
Remember? Swimmer?
What's
Yeah, she got a whole lot of flack. I'm totally forgetting her
The swimmer? Are you talking about the swimmer? Who was she?
name. No, women's soccer.
no soccer? I can't believe I forgot her name.
The one that
She's
took her shirt off?
amazing.
The one that took her shirt off when she won
Yes.
the Olympic medal?
Yeah,
Yeah, her.
her.
Megan
So
I'm trying to kill a
Megan
fly.
Rapinoe.
I'm trying to kill a fly.
what are we doing? So
I'm
okay,
trying to
so
I got Megan Rapinoe's name, so I'm excited about it.
Rapino. I think it's
Rapinoe.
Rapino. Yeah. So sorry. So I just apologized. So
Oh my God.
That was okay. That was legitimate.
that was legitimate. So you look at Megan Rapinoe and Abby Wambach and, you know, all the other female athletes that are blazing trails. And so, yes, bringing it back to your sports analogy, there are more teams. There's more women are my nieces played all kinds of sports in high school. Yes. I also think the role models are different. It is a very different era. You look at you know, Margaret Thatcher is who we used to look up to. I mean, you know, you look at the difference between female role models now
She was a
and female
badass.
role models then.
But to be
Margaret Thatcher
fair,
was a badass.
yes, but before that, it was like you had to look at I can't believe I forget her name. JFK's wife. Why am I all of a sudden forgetting one of the most
Jackie Onassis.
Jackie Onassis, Jackie Kennedy Onassis.
Well, how
Like
about
women looked up to her in like the
Franklin? How about Frank? I forgot Franklin Roosevelt's wife name.
Amy. No, that's maybe Eisenhower. God.
No, what's Franklin Roosevelt's name? She was a
Eleanor.
Oh, Roosevelt.
Eleanor, right. So I understand what you're saying. So that's what I'm asking. So has that changed that executive? Like when you see a 25, 30-year-old, have you noticed the difference or no? It really depends on the individual.
It depends on the individual. I wish I had a better answer. I wish I did. I have to
No,
tell
you
you,
have
I
a
was
fair answer.
blown away with this coaching engagement. Blown away. This woman built a multi-million-dollar company by herself.
Who?
And still was like, oh, I'm sorry, but can I say something? I'm like, what? Because she lacked the confidence. No, it's probably how she was raised. Who knows what her family environment was like? Who knows? You know, who knows? Who knows? We all bring our baggage to
Listen,
whatever
I
we
was
do.
just in a meeting. I was just in a meeting with an extraordinarily wealthy person, hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions. And there was a confrontation because anytime I'm in the room, there's typically a confrontation. And it wasn't, but it was between one of my people that worked with me and, you know, somebody on this person's team. And the person got very uncomfortable, the wealthy person who brought us all together. He says, I'm very uncomfortable with confrontation. That blew me away. So it's not just women. It's you know, it's men too. I know a lot of people, a lot of men who are uncomfortable with confrontation. I'm not comfortable with confrontation. I just need it for survival because I'm competitive. I'm hyper competitive. But I enjoy competition because I enjoy winning. But if I can not have confrontation, I take that every single day. But I'll do it because I want to win. Anyway.
For sure.
So I've seen it both from women and men. And again, I've been very fortunate that I've been around women that just tell me to shut up and move over to the side.
Yeah, but Nancy, there's got to be a very different feeling on the way women that are Anthony's daughter's age interact with society versus how my mom did, because she grew up in the 1950s and she was a teacher when you weren't allowed to be pregnant and had to quit when she was going to have me and all of that kind of stuff. So society in itself must set a baseline for these things. And I'm hoping that because of other stuff, and now it looks like the ERA is the law of the land. It is the newest part of the Constitution, even though it hasn't been written down officially yet, but it's supposedly legal. Do you think that younger women they're entering at a higher level of feelings of equality and being heard than people of my mom's generation? Sorry to be so clunky with the question.
I do. I think I do, because most of this, and you both are making me realize, most of the stories that I reference in the book, in my trainings, are stories from my generation. You know, CEOs who didn't think about being a CEO until their male colleagues suggested that they go for it, or whatever the case may be. I do see the younger women coming up through the ranks. I see more doors being opened for them. And I see more of them walking through them, but not enough. And they're not the women in the 20s, 20 years from now will have the impact. But right now, the women in their 40s, women in their 50s, women in their mid 30s, these are the women who need to be walking through the doors that are being opened for them so that they can continue to pay it forward for the rest.
Right. So it's almost like baby boomer females, they just saw a locked door. Gen X women, the doors creaked open, but they had to kick it open. And when you start to get down past millennials into Generation Z, well, maybe those doors won't necessarily be there and you could walk right through. But that
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fascinating. That's really interesting. Okay. So let me reverse things a little bit, right? Men and women are different. We have different hormones and stuff like that. We have different interests a lot. How much should we be concerned about women being on par equity with men in all businesses, or should we maybe just focus on what each individual woman wants to focus on instead of saying you have to be equal to men under all circumstances? Does that make sense? Anthony's furrowing his brow on that particular one. I think what I'm trying to say is that everybody, should choose to go into the line of work that they go into. And women were forced to go into female only jobs for so long. Maybe they don't want to go into jobs that maybe were considered male only at some point too. And maybe there's a little bit of conversation of we have to pursue our own interests and not do something because men did it or do something because women have traditionally done it. Does that make sense to you?
That makes a little bit of sense to me, I think.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having a hard time getting my
I think
across.
You know what I'm picturing when you tried to explain this twice is the NYU Investors Conference, okay, in New York every year, right? You look around that room, and I think I went the first time maybe 5 years ago. I looked around.
If you ever want to see a middle-aged white guy, that's a place to go.
Maybe, but all right, maybe what I'm saying is maybe there are fewer females that want to be the CEO of Goldman Sachs compared to the number of men that want to be CEO of Goldman Sachs. And maybe that's just the way people are as opposed to the gender roles we've been assigned. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Maybe there is differences that we have to recognize, and not all career paths are made for all men or all women.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that. What I would caution against is women self-selecting themselves out because they don't believe they can do the job, or they don't believe they can do the jobs leading up to that job. You want to be a CEO, you need to get some P&L experience, right? Women are grossly underrepresented there.
They should be able to say, I don't want to be a social worker, or I don't want to be a banker because I don't like it, as opposed to these are gender roles I've been assigned and I should do those kinds of jobs, right?
Or I'll give you a real life example. My niece just graduated college. I said, well, what are you going to do next? She said, I'm going to be a PA, physician's assistant. I said, well, why don't you want to be a doctor? She said, I'm not smart enough to be a doctor.
Oh.
What?
Right.
What did she say?
I'm not smart enough to be a doctor. Now, let me tell you something. My niece, she's my niece. She's my little mini me. This kid is about as outgoing, energetic as you can get. And I couldn't believe it. So that's the difference, Glenn, is
what did you say to her? I need to know what you said to her.
I said, what? so I said to her, she's gonna be really embarrassed if she's listening to this. I said, Robin, if you don't want to be a doctor because you don't want to work that hard and you don't feel like studying and you don't want to give up that much time of your life, that's fine. That is a lot different than saying you're not smart enough, because you are smart enough. If you choose not to go down that path because you don't want to work that hard, that's fine. Own that. And be, own that decision, but no, I never want to hear you say that again.
It's interesting you said PA, because I'm starting to see a lot of female PAs and friends of mine and family members and all that stuff. And I'm seeing that it's more of that, exactly what you're saying. Because if you're a PA, you're smart enough to be a doctor. I mean, because being a PA ain't a skip in the park. And it's more about lifestyle changes, right?
Right.
It's about, I want to have children, I want to have a family, or I don't want to have a family, I want to travel, or whatever it is. But I want to kind of ask you in managing over these period of years, I have found, again, this is just my experience, and I don't know why this is. I have just found that women are more confident and women are more capable than a lot of the men I've met.
Hell yeah.
And I've had a lot better bosses that are females than I had. I
Gotcha.
remember one male boss I didn't, it's probably more my issue, my ego or whatever. But I find the things you're talking about just as apparent in men, where they feel they're not smart enough, they feel they shouldn't really go for it, they really feel. So I see it across the board. Not only, again, everything you're saying about women percentage-wise makes sense, but I also see a lot of men suffering from the same things.
So let me illustrate this for you with something you just said. You said you're seeing a lot more PAs and it's a lifestyle choice. A lot of people are saying, I want to have children, I want to raise a family, so I don't want to do that.
Or travel.
How many men have said, I want to have children and I want to raise a family, so I don't want to go for that job?
I've made decisions that impacted my family I didn't take because of my family. But no, I don't know one man that said, I'm not going to go for that job initially because I'm going to raise a family. No, not one.
Right, but the women will. That's the difference. That's what I'm saying is, this was just made famous by Emma Watson. Somebody at the Oscars asked her, who's home watching your kids? Well, any of the male actors being asked who's home watching your kids? That's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying about the difference between men and women in society and what's going on. You would never dream of saying to a man on a plane, who's home watching your kids? You would never say that, but I get asked that constantly.
That's insane.
But Nancy, as a man, I would never ask that question. That guy's a moron. So it's not a female male thing. It's a moron, not a moron. That's a moronic question. That is a complete moron that would ask a woman that question in this day and age where you see women just, taking over the world. And, you would never ask that question. Like, so to me, that's just a person that lacks, intelligence, but whatever.
But that's the problem, right?
Well, that's most men.
they still ask those questions. One question I will never ask Anthony, hey, Anthony, what are you wearing? But women get that question all the time.
Or you look beautiful. You see it all the time. Like when a woman's on TV, say, "Oh, the first thing they say is, oh, you look beautiful." I've been trained over the last couple of years not to do that because I used to say that is, "Oh, you look lovely," or "You look." I don't do that anymore. But that's just coming of age and being in training sessions or listening to women and see how uncomfortable they are sometimes.
Well, but I would say that.
I'm sorry, Nancy, real quick. I find older women don't want you to stop saying it, whereas younger women are offended by it.
I would say that's a great suit, but that's a great tie, right? So that, and it sounds a little micromanaging, but that's what I would do. Is I love it. I love getting compliments, and I'm one of those older women. But if somebody were to say to me, "You look very beautiful today," I think that's wonderful, and that'll make my day, and that's very personal. But it's very personal. So if it's at a work environment and somebody says that is a great suit. To me, if I'm getting ready to go on stage or whatever, like those are great shoes or whatever the case may be, or you look like you're ready to crush it, whatever the case may be, is a little different. And I know that's probably not what you meant, but it's just different. But I don't mind being told I'm beautiful.
But that's a real interesting question because I would never come to you if I saw you at a speech and right before you go on stage say, "That's a beautiful blouse." I used to do that all the time. Oh, you look beautiful.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But what I'm saying is I've been trained now, no, because I will be canceled.
Yeah, Nancy, it's a good point he's saying right there because I'm afraid to say anything about about a female's appearance at all, even though I might mean it in a very genuine way that's non-sexual, non-inappropriate. But in this day and age, it's going to be read the wrong way 9 times out of 10. And unless that female is someone that I have a very long established relationship with, I'm not making any comments on what they're wearing or stuff, but I will use, you're going to crush it. You look like you're going to crush it, because that takes it away from that potential onus, right?
You know, I think it's unfortunate and it breaks my heart, but I get it. I get it. You know, everything is just so polarized everywhere, but
Yeah.
I get it. So I love you're going to crush it. You look like you're ready to crush it, or you look like you're going to, you know, nail this meeting or nail this presentation, whatever the case may be. Yeah, you know, and I think that's also an age thing, because the 20-year-olds will crucify you if you say nice earrings, right? Whereas if you were to say that to me, I'd be like, oh, thanks, and I tell you the story behind it.
Right.
But I take less offense to it. It's a fine line.
Yeah, I have one daughter that would be like, do you believe that person said I was beautiful? I'm like, yeah, because you are. And I have one daughter like, wasn't that beautiful? So, it really comes down to the personality. Listen, I've had women say nice tie or nice suit. Then I've also had women say it in a way that it's more than nice suit, nice tie, right? It's a, you know, it's a little bit more like they'll grab
Nice
the tie,
tie.
like, ooh, nice tie.
Right.
That's inappropriate.
All right. So,
Unless it comes from Glenn, that's fine.
well, yeah. Oh, because we've got that thing with each other. Plus, you're absolutely adorable, and I can't stop commenting on your looks. So, all right, Nancy, last question, because we're really running out of time. What was it like working with Dr. Producer Suzanne up at Boston University?
Suzanne is amazing. Suzanne is the epitome of hospitality. Suzanne is everything everybody should be. She is a wonderful mentor. She's passionate about the industry. She brings people along with her. She has a passion for the industry. She's amazing. Amazing.
Suzanne, how does that make you feel? I'm afraid to say you look amazing, but
I'm all choked up. But I wore my my fuchsia in spirit of Nancy's book, because that's her color, and I probably would not actually have pushed myself to do what I'm doing now if it wasn't for Nancy. So Anthony, say thank you to Nancy.
Nancy, can you send me 3 books? I'll pay for them. Suzanne will give you my address. I need those books. I want to give them to my daughters.
Yeah, if you give me their names, I'd be delighted to. I'm happy to write them a little note.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, great.
all right, Nancy, give us a good plug. How do we get this?
NancyMedoff.com for anything and all things confidence, impacting outcomes, negotiations, everything. The book is available on Amazon. It's coming out on Audible this summer. That's about it.
So this book is new? This is a relatively new book?
No, the book was released in May, but I haven't had the time really to put it on Audible.
Well, maybe you need a good year of quarantine or something like that to give you some time.
I mean, that's how the book was born, but yeah, it's, I thank you for the opportunity. It was really fun speaking with you all. And I think together we can do it. You guys are allies and it's important. I think together we can change it.
We really appreciate it. Thanks for being here, Nancy. Thank you so much. And Suzanne, we will see you shortly. So that was really good. 2 very distinct and different conversations, right, Anthony? Or what are you giggling about?
I just love it. So yeah, we'll see you shortly.
Well, you know, we got to end it. We got to keep things moving.
Listen, I think it comes down to, I would say 60% of the people can't read a room, right?
Mm-hmm.
And out of the 40% that can, 20 read it well and 20 read it poorly.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to be able to read a room,
Yep.
right? You just have to be able to understand the dynamic. If you're in a situation where there are males and females, you have to, in today's day and age, and I hate to say the word more sensitive, it's not about being, I'll give you an example, perfect example.
Yes.
Because I don't want to make it female or male. I want to make it for anybody that walks into a room. There was a young lady that we were introducing to, who's going to be the first food and beverage director of this hotel ever. And her name was Noemi. And everybody called her Naomi. How do you say it?
Naomi?
No, yeah, I can't even say it anymore.
That's my sister-in-law's name is Naomi.
I can't even say that name anymore because I said, how do you say your name? She told me, so I used her name, Noemi. And everybody around the table during the week or 2 weeks were using Naomi. And it was like, I'm sorry. And she goes, don't worry about it. It happens all the time. I stopped the meeting and I said, everyone. And I said, Naomi, do you mind if I stop the meeting? No, Amy, do you mind if I stop the meeting? I wanted to make sure everybody, she said, no, whatever you decide. And I asked everyone, it's a very small thing. Don't call me Tony. Call me Anthony. That's my name. Nobody calls me Tony because my name is Anthony. Her name is No Amy.
Right.
Everyone call her No Amy, period. It's not that hard. Thank you very much for your support. Back to the meeting. It's about standing up and reading a room for people around you, whether male or female. That drives me nuts when people don't get. One of the things I love about, with again, Joe Rogan, who's a little controversial, is he gets people's names right. He will not sleep on someone's name. Like, it is really important to him. So whether you could say a woman's blouse is pretty or she looks beautiful, you know, in today's day, it's probably ever on the side of not saying it.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And on the name thing, I can't stand when people, I'm like, is your name Steve or Steven? And they go, oh, call me whatever you want. I'm like, no, what is your name? I will call you that. It's respect.
Or just call them asshole. All right, I'll call you anything you want, asshole.
That's what you call me.
No, it's funny. If someone uses my name and somebody says, Tony, I'm like, oh, okay. You probably will never talk to me again because I'm done. You call me Tony without asking me, I will probably lose a lot of respect for you. You ask me, do you mind if I call you Tony? I say, absolutely. Call me Tony all you want. Do not call me Tony unless you ask. And then if you ask, I'll say yes.
I'll be honest with you. I will not call you Tony. You're an Anthony. You don't exude Tony.
What's interesting is my name was Tony from 1986 to 1993, 4 years in the Air Force and 2 or 3 years in the hotel business until I changed it back to Anthony. Because in the Air Force, day one, somebody asked me, what's your name? I said Tony because it felt more mature.
Yep.
So no one in the Air Force knows me as Anthony, not one person.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And producer Suzanne is saying she was known as Susie until she became a hotel manager. Again, wouldn't even occur to me to call her Susie. What can I tell you? Big news for Tony's out there with the Chinese New Year. Tony the Tiger is probably really living it up this year. Very exciting.
Yeah, I've had people call me Tony the Tiger too. I don't like that either. It's funny. It's funny that we're talking about it. I can't tell you how much I dislike when somebody calls me Tony without asking permission.
Yeah, because
I don't know why. I don't know why it bothers me because it doesn't bother me if you call me Tony. It bothers me that you didn't ask me.
Right. Interesting. All right. I'm still going to call you Anthony, or maybe I'll just call you, hey, Anthony. Because
I had somebody in an interview lose a job because they called me Tony and never once asked me. And called me Tony throughout the whole. They never, and they were qualified, and I liked them. They lost the job.
That's a shame. That's really a shame. I'll tell you one thing that's not a shame. You guys are out there. You're making work happen. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. And if anybody's still listening over there, you can check us out on Spotify too. We may not be Joe Rogan, but we are on Spotify. Neil Young insisted on it. So he's at Anthony Hotels. I'm at Traveling Glenn. Great to see you today, Anthony. Hope you had a good
to see you too. I'm looking at Gordon Storm. Hey, Gordon, one of the things bothering me, you wrote yesterday, you're like, oh, I'm still in the Air Force, and you sound disappointed. I'm sorry you don't like the Air Force. I love the Air Force. You must have been in forever. But I love the Air Force.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow with another great show. And until then, remember, you've got one life, so blaze on and
be kind to yourself.
See you tomorrow.